Despite people still holding on to the past playoff failures of Lamar, Jackson is one of the few quarterbacks that can go blow for blow with Mahomes, and Lamar actually likely even had a better year this season than Mahomes did because Lamar had a 91 PFF grade compared to Mahomes' 89. So there's an edge for Lamar there. And you could really argue there's an edge for Lamar in the basic stats as well, because Lamar had 4,500 yards and 29 touchdowns versus Mahomes' 4,570 yards and 27 touchdowns. So the yards are nearly identical, but there's two more touchdowns in total for Lamar, so there's a little bit of an edge in that regard. Weapon wise for Baltimore, Kansas City matches up really nicely with Baltimore because of what Baltimore wants to do. Because Trent McDuffie is a great nickel to watch Zay Flowers, and L'Jarius Sneed will give Odell Beckham Jr. all he can handle. Then Joshua Williams will be able to cancel out Rashad Bateman. So that's really nice to handle basically all of the receiving options at the wide receiver position, at least for Kansas City. The only question will be if Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews can be covered or not, because Nick Bolton is really good in coverage, but Steve Spagnuolo likes to blitz him, so Bolton won't always be able to cover the tight ends, and he won't be able to cover them both when they're out there at the same time. So there is going to be some options for Baltimore if they do decide to go into the two tight end package, because Willie Gay is a really poor coverage linebacker, so he could be exposed by either of the great tight ends for Baltimore. And I think that's something Baltimore will like to do fairly frequently if Andrews can be out on the field for sustained periods of time. As far as the offensive line is concerned, Baltimore is third in rushing expected points added, which is a great benchmark for an offense's success. And I did a video on that if you don't know what the stat means. Conversely, Kansas City is very poor at defending the run, as they were 23rd in rushing success rate allowed. So Baltimore should be able to rush the ball down Kansas City's throat about the same as Buffalo was able to do to Kansas City last week. Similarly, Baltimore's pass blocking should probably have the edge over Kansas City's pass rush as well, because Baltimore ranked third in PFF's pass blocking grade compared to Kansas City ranking 14th in pressure grade by PFF. So that's pretty huge. Baltimore having the edge in the run and pass game in the trenches offensively is a pretty big mark. So that is something you'll have to keep in mind throughout this video, is that Baltimore will be having the edge in a key area. Shifting to the other side of the ball, though, passing wise, Baltimore matches up pretty nicely with Kansas City as well, because Rashee Rice does most of his work out of the slot. It's actually about half. So about half of his work in the slot and half outside, obviously. So when in the slot, Baltimore can throw Kyle Hamilton or Arthur Maulet at him, with success probably coming with either of those players, because Hamilton is a top 5 defensive back in the league, and Maulet is a really solid nickel in his own right. So they have viable options at either rate. And then beyond that, when on the outside, Brandon Stevens, Ronald Darby, and possibly Marlon Humphrey will watch him too. So they're not going to be having any struggles with wherever Rice is placed, which is really key because Rice looks to look for those favorable matchups. He'll either be in the slot more if they have a poor slot nickel corner to defend him, or he'll be outside more if they have lesser outside corner talent. For the Ravens, they're pretty good at every corner position and just really every defensive back position, or if you really want to go broad, every defensive position, because they are just absolutely stacked in that regard. So the thing is, too, Kelsey is basically the only other threat for Kansas City. and he's going to go against a top 2 linebacker duo in the league that is arguably the best in the league. It's between them and San Francisco. Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen are both really good linebackers that are really solid in coverage. So they're not going to be getting exposed too often against Kelsey, even with Kelsey being a matchup nightmare for most teams. To put it bluntly, Baltimore is strong where Kansas City is, and where Kansas City is weak in their secondary options, Baltimore remains strong. As far as the offensive line is concerned for Kansas City, the Chiefs' life gets a little bit easier there, as they're ranked 19th in rushing expected points added, and they're going against the 15th best rushing success rate defense in Baltimore. So it should be pretty even. It's not really a great rushing offense, and going against a not so good rushing defense as well. Pressure wise, it's elite on elite though, because Baltimore ranks 6th in PFF pressure grade, which is identical to Kansas City's 6th best pass blocking rank in PFF grade as well. The one thing to watch here though is Joe Thuney is being out for the game, and that is pretty big. Thuney is arguably the best offensive lineman for the Chiefs, and at the very least, he's their best pass blocking lineman. So that's a really big deal. He is going to be missed, especially because the interior rush for the Ravens is as good as their edge rushing duo is. So they should be able to get pressure with Justin Madubuike and Travis Jones as well. So that could be something of an issue for the Chiefs, is getting that interior pressure that'll just really stifle any quarterback's production, especially Mahomes's, as he likes to dance around the pocket, obviously. So that could be a problem for the Chiefs. To put a bow on this, it's super hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes, especially when he has a great defense behind him. But I'm riding with Baltimore here. Baltimore's team is just much more fleshed out than Kansas City's is, and the Chiefs have some real weaknesses that can be exposed, primarily their run defense and lack of receiving options beyond Rice and Kelsey, and I think those will be exposed pretty heavily by Baltimore because the Ravens really have a strong defense. It's not me telling you anything new with that, but I think it's almost underrated just how dominant this defense has been. They were able to completely shut down the 49ers offense, which looked unstoppable for most of the year. And they also looked great against the Dolphins. They looked great against basically everybody. And I don't see why they can't look great against the Chiefs as well. I know Patrick Mahomes is a different animal than any of those quarterbacks like Tua and Purdy. He's basically a different quarterback than any other person playing the position. But Baltimore's defense, I think they're up to the challenge. And offensively, I do think they'll be able to run the ball down Kansas City's throat, which is really setting yourself up for some problems because Baltimore wants to run the ball to begin with, and then they'll be able to set up the play action off of that, which just creates more problems. I think Kansas City will be able to watch the Ravens receivers really well, but the Ravens aren't necessarily bound to the success of their passing options because Lamar, he's going to be rushing as a designed run a lot of the time, but he's also going to be able to run in the passing game as well, especially because the Chiefs are going to be playing a lot of man coverage, which will almost require a spy or just the defense to contain rush, which is going to lead to Lamar having all kinds of time in the pocket, which against Mahomes or Lamar or any of these elite quarterbacks, you just cannot give them time in the pocket. They're going to find whoever's open, or they're going to create another way as well, such as bringing the spy down to blitz after a while and then running off and escaping after the contain is broken. So there's a lot of options for Baltimore to still cause problems for the Chiefs defense. I see less issues presented by the Chiefs to the Ravens defense.